I'm going to record this. So let's share the screen. Now this time I'll just do the, all right, so we're going to talk about the next project, which is a multi-part wearable object. Wearable object can mean a bracelet. It can mean a necklace. It could mean something that hangs from your ears, or, you know, I mean, as long as it meets the movable part. And, you know, we're working basically with a ball and socket form. That doesn't mean that, you know, if you have an idea that you want to play with that's outside of this particular purview, let's talk about that. So, but using Rhino, we're going to create a multi-part wearable object. Let me move that up a little. There we go. Different materials and processes are permitted. As you saw out in the case there were some laser cut parts on some of those pieces. Some of them were done with a clear resin. Some of them were done with white resin. They were painted in different ways. Color was a big part of what we had going on out there. There's also other materials that we can print in besides our form. Materials. There's a dimension machine downstairs. We're going to talk a little bit about these processes too on Monday. And then there's a nylon printer over in the library, where the other option is to print to nylon through Shapeways or Xometry, which are outside service bureaus. And we can talk about that as well. If the only problem with using an outside service bureau is they tend to take longer than what we have here available at Tyler or Temple. And we'll see. We can talk about that. We can talk about the time frame. Some of the service bureau time frames have gotten better, and some of them are still a little unpredictable. For instance, they'll tell you that, you know, it'll arrive on this day, and you may not hear until the day before that it's not going to arrive on that day. So it's not always good to totally rely on an outside place to get your things printed. So using Rhino, we're going to create a multi-part wearable object. Different materials and processes are permitted. The idea is based on a basic ball and socket joint and finding a way to make it your own. We'll also plan our final piece using KeyShot so that we can preview different finishing options. That's kind of a fun thing to do. Yes, I am recording. Gosh, I was so afraid of forgetting to record. It happens sometimes. I get halfway through a presentation, but here we are. So we'll be using KeyShot. We're going to start with KeyShot again next week. So let's. Did we have a question?
Sorry, I was talking to my cat. I didn't know. Oh. No,
okay, well, you know, I mean, that's all right. That's all right. Just as long as your cat isn't helping you with your homework, right? So I wanted to show you some basics. I took pictures, obviously, of the ones that we looked at last week, but there are some other people who work with some of this basic form of interlocking 3D printed structure. And Alicia Melka Takro, I guess is how it's pronounced, I'm not sure, is one of these people. She does some interesting stuff. And this is an idea too, in order to help you visualize the idea of what a ball and socket is. We have a ball and socket in our body. And every day we walk around and we use our hip bones, and the head of the femur and the acetabulum of the, you know, fits right in there. That's, you know, the socket and the ball. And this is a basic of what a ball and socket is. And we'll be getting more into this with the exercise document as well. But this is an interesting, I always found this piece kind of interesting because it's basically a ball and socket that just changes size over the course of this necklace. And this was 3D printed in nylon. So it was all 3D printed at one time. Because these interlocking parts were not touching in the final 3D file, and because of the nylon process, the process allows the 3D printed parts to be supported by the unprinted material around it. We can talk about how that process works in a little bit. But it's kind of a neat piece, especially considering how simple it is. Here's some more of her work. And very similar here. We've got really thin walls in the sockets of this here. There's some more of her, you know, you can really create some interesting effects by just multiplying the sheer number that you have here going on. And you can see that these are dyed. We talked about the dip dyeing last Wednesday, and that's probably how these were done. Nylon and dip dyeing works out really beautifully. This is just a rendering of some 3D printed ball and socket files. But you can see here, now what's interesting with these is we've got these little openings on the side, and that helps the plastic flex just a little bit in these smaller parts so you could get the ball to snap in place. It's not always easy to figure out what these measurements should be, because depending on what your outside form is, it may be different from one object to the other. So this is where test parts are super important. And you can do small test parts too. Yu Ye was a grad student here. I think 2 years ago she graduated, and she did her entire thesis was based on the idea of a ball and socket and creating different forms and how they could go together. I don't know if, so we can look here and see how she had these pieces. There are pieces that are all just sockets and pieces that are all just balls. And then up here, she has a combination where the pieces have a ball and a socket. And they can be arranged in different ways. She uses different materials in the ends of some of them, but she uses pretty much the same basic form. But here you can also see that she changes the size of the form itself, even though the, you know, you can see she's got a thicker, a thicker kind of branch between the ball and the two sockets here than she does, say, here. Actually, that piece looks like it's all balls rather than sockets. And then here are pieces that are either all sockets or all balls, and they can be connected together in different ways. Here's another way of trying to do the ball and socket. It's almost like a kind of a hinge. And here's a close-up of it. We have just a basic ball. And then instead of the socket becomes a different kind of form here in that it's the space in between these two like donuts or toruses. And you have, you have the support for the upper end of the socket here. Oh, sorry. And here's where we can start looking a little closer at some of the pieces that we saw on Monday. We've got, you can see some of these slits here for this piece and the piece for this, and you can see how they were dip dyed, and you've got it like lighter at the top part where the ball goes in. This is definitely not as colored as here, and you can see that this part is a little darker. Now there may be a couple reasons for that. With the clear resins, when you dip dye, the thinner parts will dye faster, and they may dye darker than thicker parts. So if the wall thickness here is a little thinner, then that could cause this to be darker. It could also be that, if you dip the whole thing quickly and rinse it, you'll get a real light color. And then if you just then dip this last part into the dye, you'll just get that part darker and not dip this top part in. You can see how the whole thing looks and how it really, it flows into itself. I really do believe that there's extra dye on these edges. And then there was the one with the cats where the tail connects right into the face of the next cat. Whoever did these really had a fun time painting these. They're super
that was
colorful.
Aaron. This is Aaron's pieces. Aaron
Yeah.
Lee.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah, they're great. They are fun. Yes, and here's a close-up. Yeah, Erin. Cool. So this is just another way that you can think about coloring your pieces. I really like this piece because it uses two different processes. We have the ball and sockets going into one another, and then this is laser cut acrylic. And laser cut acrylic can be formed when it's warm. You can actually move it around. You can form it with metal tools. You can use just gloves. We have like oven mitt gloves, and you can handle it and change the. We have a heat gun that you can use to soften it, to change the shape of it, or we also have acrylic bending assemblies, I guess you could call them. It's sort of like it has the heating wire enclosed in a long space. A lot of what we use acrylic for is to build stands. At least that's what we've done in the past. We've changed around a lot of our stand philosophy in the last couple of years, but being able to bend acrylic in a straight line is an important thing. So if you just soften the acrylic in a straight line, you can bend it right there. Anyway, I can do an acrylic demo if a lot of you decide that you want to do something with acrylic, but I like how these acrylic pieces are just curved and then they're rounded around the part of the ball and sockets. This, of course, was a really fun piece. And again, this is another one of these brightly painted pieces. Doug talked about doing different layers using watered down tester's paint. I might suggest using a primer, as I demonstrated last week. And again, if you're using any spray paint, let's make sure that we take a trip down and refresh ourselves about the foundation spray booth so that we can do that safely. But these are just so cute, these little leaves and what looks like a mushroom cap, or I'm not even sure. It's just adorable, huh? Paulette, you have a question.
I think Liv made those, but I think she used like nail polish.
Did she really?
Yeah. I need to
Okay.
ask her again. Or she used something to get it that like really opaque color.
Right. Okay. So you don't think it was just paint?
No, I think it was like either some type of enamel, maybe. I need to ask. I'm gonna ask her.
Okay, because the tester's paint that I demonstrated last week is like, it's considered an enamel paint. But yeah, I mean, we'll see what, but that's fine. That's fine. But it, I mean, that works. You can also, if you prime, you can use acrylics as well. I do suggest using a sealer. That was one thing that I didn't demonstrate in the demo last week, was a sealer. We didn't get to that point, but once you get the colors where you want it, it's nice to put either a gloss or a matte sealer on it. Again, always use it in the spray booth, or if you're working at home, make sure you go outside. It's that stuff's really bad for your lungs and your brain. So this was a really neat piece. I really like how the gradient worked through the necklace instead of in each individual piece. And here we have very little branch of between the ball and socket, but it's really, so this is just another way that you can rework the ball and socket in your own way. And this looks like it was dyed all at once as one piece, dip dyed probably into liquid and then dip dyed more on the lower part. This little, these are like cartoon characters, really. They're just, this is fun. And this I believe is all spray paint. And if it's not, then you could certainly recreate this using spray paint. And these were definitely painted individually before they were assembled.
Yeah, she used gold foil.
Did she use gold? Oh, she used gold leaf?
Yeah. Sorry, I know these things because I was literally there.
Great. Oh, that's wonderful. Well, but the pink was spray paint, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I didn't even look that close at the gold. Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. So yeah, gold leaf is really a nice, easy way to get this kind of look. And gold leaf on 3D printed parts is really fantastic. I've actually, in one of my pieces, I actually ordered a piece from Shapeways that was supposed to be gold plated steel. And it didn't come in time, but I had a spare in nylon and I did gold foil on top of it. And it turned out when they came in, you couldn't tell the difference except by picking them up and knowing which was which. But it's amazing what you can do with gold leaf on 3D printed parts. And I'm happy to demonstrate that. If any of you guys want to work with gold leaf, we can totally do that. I actually may even have a demo that I did 2 years ago when we were doing those spring break kind of seminars online. But you can see here actually closer to it. What you do with the gold leaf is you put an adhesive, it's called a sizing on the part, once it's clean, of course. And that's absolutely important for every finish that you're going to do on your 3D printed parts. Just like if you're working with metal or wood, cleanliness and having a clean part to start with is going to help your finish the whole way through. So you would cover this with a sizing after it's been cleaned, and you wait for the sizing to actually dry. And it doesn't feel that tacky, but the gold foil will just stick right to it. And then there are extra pieces of the gold foil that will not adhere, like where it overlaps or whatever, and you can just brush those off. And then the final part of that is that it needs to be sealed. You have to spray it with a clear sealer. And I can bring in some of those materials and show you. And gold leaf is not as expensive as you might think. You can get it in Speedball carries a great set for it's advertised for like lettering, but you can use it for almost anything, especially 3D printed parts. Here again is some more acrylic. Or is that acrylic? I can't quite, I meant to get a closer look at this one, and maybe these were just, oh no, I think those are still 3D printed parts. The clear here, and then, yeah, that's a ball and socket straight through there. So, and these are just really clear. They were just like really well finished. It looks like they, so you can actually polish the form resin, the 3D printed form clear resin to almost like glass or very clear plastic with abrasive papers and wet sanding. It's a lot easier to do on a flat surface than it is on a curved surface for obvious reasons, but this was a fun way to do this one too. And here's a close-up of this guy. And I love the little smiley face. It's just like, so we've got like little drippies, and these are done really well. So let's go over that project overview one more time now that we've looked at the options. Using Rhino, we're going to create a multi-part wearable object. Different materials and processes are permitted. So if you want to print a part in nylon and print another part in clear, and if you wanted to do something using the dimension machine downstairs, those are all that. This is definitely a lot more flexible of a project than your first one. So, and again, the idea is based on a basic ball and socket joint and making it your own. You can modify the outsides of, you know, the stalk between the ball and the socket. You can modify the outside of the socket. Generally, the interior of your socket, though, and your ball have to be very uniform. So it's a question of dealing with those two uniform parts and then going, you know, having fun with the rest of it. We're going to use KeyShot to plan our final options for finishing. And, you know, we'll start talking about KeyShot again, like I said, next week. And here again is our schedule. We're starting to talk about it today. I'm going to do the ball and socket. I'm going to do a quick demo. I'd like you to have the file by Monday, or, you know, if you don't have it Monday, we'll do it during class Monday, because it's not a lot. I'm going to do a quick demo of it today, and you'll see that really you're just going to do a basic ball and socket so that you can start to get a feel for these measurements and these tolerances. We're going to plan the final piece. Yeah, I'm repeating myself here. And then this piece is due on April 11th. All right. So any questions here? Back through. We got our fun little guys. So that was gold leaf. Great. That's good. And love this clear resin. All right. Okay, well then I am going to stop sharing for the moment, and I'll go back in and bring up that our ball and socket tutorial. And let's see here. I want to make this a little bigger. Okay, so that's going to be the best way to arrange my windows. That's always the trickiest thing here. Okay, got that. Let's make a new guy here. All right, let me go back and we're going to share my screen. No other questions in the meantime? Okay. All right, well, we're continuing to, I'm just going to share my whole screen. And let's take a look at this. If I could download this over. Yeah, here we go. And this way we can at least look at these. All right, so this document here is on your Canvas course under Project 2. And I'm going to try and bring this up a little. Okay. So I'm just going to show you how we do a basic ball and socket. So the first thing that we'll need to figure out is how big is the ball going to be? And we can start this with a sphere. No, not surface, solid. Usually start this with a solid, although I really should change this around to use sub D for this, but I'm going to do this demo with our basic NURBS. I'm going to try and come up with a sub D version of this because it may be helpful. Okay, so I'm going to make this 1 inch. Okay, my sphere is 1 inch, and let's work here. I'm going to do ghosted. I like to look at things in ghosted because they really do help me anyway. I mean, some of you guys may be able to visualize better in wireframe, but in wireframe, it doesn't look like it's solid to me. So I'm going to go ghosted here as well. So that's good. So then this is going to be, with this one, with this particular technique, we're going to start and say that this is the socket. So if that's the socket, then I'm going to need another one inside. So let's go and create another sphere. We're going to make that center. And again, we got our center O snap one. So if I hover around the edge, it'll start in the center. And now I want my, oh, I did a radius, not a diameter. Okay. So we've got a 2 inch socket now. This is really big, not actually what I wanted. Let's escape and do this again. Because I really wanted this to be let's start it in the origin point, 0, 0, 0. Let's change this to diameter. Now I'm going to make it 1. And you guys do understand the difference. If I leave it at radius, then everything is twice as large as I wanted. So now I'm going to do another sphere. Again, I'm going to hover around the edge till my center O snap comes up. And I know that I want about less than 1/10 of an inch, I'm going to say. That's my ballpark that I'd like to test is, let's say 0.09. So that's the difference between the one and the other. So I should make the diameter of this 0.91 of an inch. Okay, so now I can see that there's one sphere inside another sphere. Actually, let's change the layer of the inside one. Let's make that red so we can see the difference here. Okay, so you can see that there's that difference. So then, so this will actually be my ball to go into my socket. Now, the outside sphere then, I'm going to offset that to the wall thickness. So remember, the tolerance between two pieces is the space in between. The wall thickness is the thickness of our 3D printed part. And the wall thickness of our socket is important. So let's say I want that to be 0.1. So now I'm going to offset that sphere using offset surface. Okay, I'm going to type in offset surface here. And the offset, with offset surface, and we did get a demo on offset the other day, you can move it either inside or outside. And you can change that direction just by clicking. So we want this to be outside. And the thickness we're going to go with is 0.1 of an inch. So that's 1/10 of an inch. And that looks good. And I'm going to hit enter. So now we can see, and actually, can we see? Let's take the inside, the socket here, and let's make that blue so we can see all these different colors. All right. So this is the outside, this is the inside, and this is our ball. It's the outside of the socket, the inside of the socket, and the ball. So what we're going to do in this particular tutorial is we're going to just we're going to Boolean difference a socket here. But yeah, I like to, the way this tutorial, yeah, let's hide the inside guy. And you could do that with Control H. You could go and click up on here on your light bulb. And now we're going to take another sphere, which I'm just going to eyeball this guy. Solid, sphere, center radius. I'm just going to eyeball this one and put it like here. All right, and I want to make sure that it's overlapping. We can see it's overlapping over here. It's overlapping. All right, that's fine. We're going to take this and we're going to Boolean difference both of these. So let's type in the Boolean difference command and see what it wants. So select surfaces or poly surfaces to subtract from. So we're going to choose both of those balls. Again, I'm just dragging from right to left, touching these guys and selecting them. And that's where, let me show goes. You know, with just wireframe, that looked like it was an ellipse and not a sphere. So now it's asking me for select surfaces or poly surfaces to subtract from. Press. So now I have to select that. I'm going to hit enter. And I got what? Oops, sorry. I apologize. I'm trying to go here. We've got this and delete input. Okay, so we want to subtract. Oh wait, with. I did. Wait a minute. Let's start this command again. To subtract from, press enter. To select with, delete input. Yes, we'll let that disappear. Hit enter. Creating message, and now it told me that it broke history. So what did this do? It didn't do what I thought it would. In this one, usually it cuts and leaves the socket. All right, well, what we can do here is then take this sphere and we are going to Boolean difference the interior sphere from it. And now we have a socket. Not sure why this, okay, finish creating the socket. Okay. It looks like it didn't, it didn't work the same way. And now we do show, and we see our hidden object. And this is our basic ball and socket. And here, the part that we still have to make is whatever is going to be like the stalk to connect our ball and socket. So let's just start with a cylinder. I'm going to go with a solid cylinder. We're going to start it in the center of this whole assembly. I have Smart Track on. I'm going to shut that off. Smart Track is really helpful when you need it, but I find it highly distracting when you don't. Okay, and we're going to use here, we're going to do the radius in the front viewport. And we don't want to go from both sides. We're just going to go on one side. We'll go out to here. And let's make that our current. And there's the cylinder. It overlaps. That's great. We're going to Boolean union these two together. I'm going to just type in Boolean union. There we go. And that is our basic ball and socket. If we wanted to make a chain of these, I would copy this, COPY, point to copy from, I would choose the center. Let's see if I can get a center. Here we go. And then I'm going to take that and move it down to, I want to make sure I'm holding shift so it's perfectly in line. I hit enter. Now, do that. Let's go Boolean union. We can use the icon this time. And here is our ball and socket. All right. Kind of boring, isn't it? And this is where you get to be creative. All right. The other way you could do this is by using curves and then using the, I think that they use, yeah, the revolve command going through, and then again, just creating the stalk for your center. This gives you a couple different ways to do it. What I really would like to have you guys do is just make a basic ball and socket like this. I want you to tell me what your wall thickness is, and I want you to tell me what your clearance. The difference between your inside socket and the ball that sits in it is your clearance. Now, in this case, this will not be able to fit out of here. If this was printed in place, and it can be printed in place, if this was printed in one of the processes that allows for a support material that can be easily removed, such as the SLS nylon printer, the Fuse, it's called the Fuse 1 that we have over at the Charles Library, or our Dimension that we have down in the Tyler basement that we can use. We can send things to be printed there. We just have to take the files down and give them to Steve. If we print it in that, then when the print happens, this is supported by support material that dissolves. And then your piece will become movable once that support material's missing. But if you're going to use either of the Form 2 or the form printers that we have Form 2s and Form 3s, then you're going to need to be able to disassemble these and reassemble them. So what I would suggest is maybe some of those little slits like we saw in the presentation and that we saw on some of the parts in the case. And that means that we could pop that ball out. The other thing we could do is the socket is only going to go so far. So it's possible that you could get a little bit of flex around the plastic here if you cut it, say, here. Okay, so you see that we would still have enough inside here to hold the ball in place, right? But right there is where it would flex a little bit to come out. Okay, would it fall out? It depends on how much clearance it has here. What this distance is between the interior ball and the exterior of the ball and the interior of the socket. Okay, do we have any questions about this? I'm going to save this file on my desktop for now. Where are we at here? Ball and socket. Demo today is 2/9/22. Okay. All right. Stop sharing. Any questions? Nope. Okay. Well then, in that case, I will stop recording so that we can get to other work we have. A number of you still need to finish up your bangles and get those submitted for printing. We have to go through, we still have to go through NetFab with a number of them, and we'll get there. So, all right. Stop the recording. Wait a minute, I'm just going to pause it in case I have to come back.